All right. It's 1 minute past 7, so let's get the show on the roads. Welcome, everyone, to our third edition of UX Beers on Lockdown. Tonight's event is sponsored by POW UX, and we're going to have a tool battle, which should be pretty fun. We've got lots of speakers talking about the design tools that make them passionate and help in their day-to-day work. I just want to give a brief introduction about UX Beers, who we are, in case it's your first time here, and then I'll go through some details of the events, and then we'll get right into it. So this should go pretty easy breezy and quick. UX Antwerp is the oldest and largest network of UX professionals. About 8 years ago, we started with just a very small group of people at a cafe who wanted to get together after work, have a nice cold beer, and talk about user experience design. And 8 years later, we are now a growing community of over 2,500 members, and we meet every month. We always have met every month. We always have 2 speakers. Sometimes we mix it up a little bit with a more interactive style event, which was what we're doing tonight. And anyone is welcome to be a speaker, or to host an event, actually, and share what they know about UX, what makes them excited. Speaking of speakers, we are still recruiting one speaker, actually, for the rest of the year. We're looking for a speaker from September, excuse me. So if you would like to share your knowledge and expertise or practice your speaking skills, please do get in touch with us on our Slack channel or on our website, uxantwerp.be. You can sign up to be a speaker and be on the main stage as well. Speaking of Slack, if you haven't already, you can use this QR code really quickly. I will give you a few seconds to open up your phone and take a snap of that. You can join the conversation on Slack. You can look for freelance work or new jobs. We have a help channel so that if you need help with a UX problem or something at work, then you can ask the community, or you can just post memes. It's open to everyone, and it's a good time. So join us on Slack. And I want to give a shout out to next month's events. Excuse me, not next month. Next month we're on vacation, but in August we'll come back, and we're sponsored by Mono Design and Creative Skills, and it'll most likely be an online event. We're not sure. We're waiting to see if we can open it up and maybe have physical events again. But regardless, we'll let you know. So hopefully you can join us in August. And before we get started, I know that we're all UX professionals and we work on user interface design as our living. But before we get started, I just want to point out a few of the features on Hopin in case you're new to it. It's a very cool digital platform that has a lot of really cool features and fun things for us to do to help us interact as a community like we would in real life. So the first thing I want to point out is sessions. You'll find it in the left toolbar over there. You click on sessions, and there's a few different rooms that you can go into. And the way that we picture this is like, you show up to an event and you've got a few circles of people who are chatting about things. You can walk over and introduce yourself, and you can chat with other UX designers. So don't be shy. During the breaks, you can always join sessions and meet new people. Just click on any of them. Just make sure that when you enter, you share your audio and video. If no one's in the room yet, you'll see the blue button there. If there's already people in the room, then it'll be in the top right. But make sure to press the blue button. Otherwise, you're just sort of lurking and looking, and no one actually can see you and you can't interact. We'll also be using sessions for the second half of our event tonight. We'll have a few speakers who will take up the first parts, and then we'll take a break. And then the sessions will actually become kind of an interactive area where you can talk to the speakers, and it's sort of the part of the event. So make sure you definitely check out sessions, and don't be shy. Click on the blue button and say hello. Let's see. The next one is networking. So we'll open this up during breaks and at the end of the events. And this is sort of like speed dating for networking, which always sounds really scary, but I promise it's not. Usually this is the thing that people love the most. When you click on networking, you'll be randomly matched with someone else in the networking channel, and you'll connect, but only for about 1.5 minutes. So you just have kind of a quick introduction. You can say who you are, what you're working on, and meet lots of new people that way. It's like chat roulette. It's actually really, really fun. I highly encourage it. There's also a chat feature, which you'll notice is kind of permanently in the right sidebar. You can chat to the entire event. You can chat within a session, or you can even find individual people. If you met someone really cool on networking and you want to follow up later, you can just find people in the third bar there, and make sure to click around, and as you move around, it'll follow you so that you can always make comments on the silly speakers on stage, or chat with your fellow UX professionals. Tonight, I want to welcome, we have a full stage actually, probably more people than we've had on stage in a long time, but POW UX really wanted to explore design tools. And I think this is a really cool way to do it. They've invited experts and power users for all these different design tools that we use, and they are going to talk about the way that they use them, how they help them in their everyday lives in terms of design, prototyping, and process. And they're going to kind of battle it out and stake their claim as as using the best tool, and explain what they think is the best feature that it has to offer. Obviously, as UX designers, we use lots of different tools. So I think this is a really cool way to explore how maybe prototyping could be done in one way versus sharing or collaboration in another way. So I'm pretty excited to hear what they have to say. That'll be the first half-hour session. And then we'll take a break, about 15 minutes. You can freshen up your beer, you can go to the toilets, you can join some networking and meet some people. But then at 8 o'clock, we'll all meet back in the sessions part, where you can meet up with some of the power users from the POW UX team and talk to them about whatever your questions are. So we won't do a formal Q&A this time. That will all be handled in the sessions. So without further ado, I'd first like to just thank Adobe XD. They really helped us digitize and get online so that we could continue having monthly UX beers. And they have, again, provided the digital platform for us tonight. But above all, I want to thank our host and the provider of all these experts tonight, POW UX. And without much further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Peter Ayer, who is one of the heads of POW UX. Welcome, Peter.
All right, thank you, Annie. I'll share my screen. So, yes, I'm Peter. I'm a business unit manager at POW. And what do we do at POW, actually? It's pretty simple. We build digital services within end-to-end capacity. We have cross-functional expertise in everything that's related to user-facing products. I know last year we were here too, and then we said we were 80 people. We grew our team with 40 people since then, so we're more than 120 people now. And what's important to know is that we have a strong focus on people. We try people to help them with their career paths. And we try to really motivate them to make the best out of themselves. What do we do? I already said digital product development from start to finish. We do digital strategy, we do user experience design. Then we move on to development and also the support and maintenance of everything. Some of our clients include KBC, Katoenasi, Colruyt, Media House. Basically, a lot of big corporates that are active in Belgium. I'm pretty proud of VRT being one of our clients because I really love public radio and public TV, and it's a dream to work for them. We help them actually improving their UX process and helping them with making better products. If you're interested, then you can contact us. You can check pow.de. We're currently rebuilding that, but you can always look at our job openings, or you can just directly email me at peter@pow.de. But enough about POW. Why we're here is because of the UX tool war. All right, I see everyone. No, I can't see anyone actually, but I hear everyone thinking UX tool war. What the fuck is this about? So we put some Sketch, Acture, and Adobe XD and Figma warriors in a relentless battle for the title of most wanted tool. These are the warriors. Dan Simpkins from Kit and Kin, he's going to represent Sketch. Sebastian from PowUX, he's going to represent Adobe XD. Kevin from PowUX 2, he's going to represent Acture. And Juliette, also from PowUX, she's really our Figma warrior. Of course, we didn't want to just do a boring comparison of the tool. That would be really, really boring, and everyone would be falling asleep after 5 minutes. So what did we do? We gave everyone an assignment. Everyone got the same assignment. They have to rebuild StudyBuddy. StudyBuddy is an app that we made during the Corona crisis. We came up with the concept, and we gave everyone the wireframes for it, and they had to rebuild it. The purpose of StudyBuddy is that as a student, you can connect with a teacher or someone who wants to help you with your schoolwork, and then that teacher can help you with it. Because during the Corona crisis, a lot of students, they couldn't have help with their schoolwork because the teachers weren't available, and we wanted to connect both together. So based on this small assignment, we asked our tool warriors to spend 2 hours creating a clickable prototype based on it and in their tool of choice. So it's Acture, Adobe XD, Sketch, or Figma. All plugins and integrations are allowed, and the goal is to use this creation process to show us the strongest assets and advantages of each tool. That's clear to everyone? So, just right before we start, if you have any questions, please ask them through our Slido tool. I'll immediately show it. You can already scan the QR code and ask questions that you have for a specific tool, because later on we will go into the sessions after the main event, and then in those sessions everyone will be able to ask the questions and to see how some things in the specific tool work. Let's start with a very small poll so you can access Slido, and then we'll move forward to the actual toolbar. So just to get started, how do you currently feel about design tools? What's your feeling now? It comes up as a word cloud normally. Everyone's excited, curious. Woohoo! With only 5 votes, we're not going to get there. I see someone questioning why Acture is in there. Just watch, and you'll see what Kevin can do with Acture. People are also interested in collaborative tools, collaboration. They feel good about their design tools. Of course, also some people are skeptical, or they just see it as work. Of course, it's a fast-moving world. I think if there's one thing that we learned, especially around Adobe XD, that within a few months they really catched up with some features that weren't there yet. So it's really something that's evolving quite fast. Photoshop is dead, but I think that's something that we already knew. Let me quickly take a screenshot of this, and then we'll move on to the next question. I think our Figma representative was also in there, because he or she loves Figma all the way. Paper and crayons. Yeah, we try to motivate someone. to do paper and crayons, but we couldn't find anyone because you can't make any funny GIFs with paper and crayons. So then the more important question, this was just to test whether the tool works. I'm going to change the question, and then normally you're all going to be able to see it immediately. Which tool do you most frequently use for work now? We only give the option to vote for one of the 4 options that we tested. Sketches in the lead. Not that many people using Action. Still more than other weeks did. Ooh, more people using Figma. And still so many people using Action. All right, nice. It's surprising. It's very surprising. Action and Figma are on the same plate. Sketch is almost similar, and Adobe is not used much. Only 12% of people. So hopefully our sponsors are not too unhappy about that. Now Figma is on top. But maybe after this presentation, you will change your mind. Let's see. Let's move back to our presentation. We had the poll. So, are you ready to fight? Let's start with our first tool warrior. Dan, you're on.
Hi everyone. I'm Dan, and I'm here, and I'm going to be basically battling on behalf of Sketch today. I think if we can just move to the next slide. I'm a UX and UI designer from the UK, as Pietro said, from Kith and Kin. And I think for me, like, Sketch has its kind of strengths and weaknesses. I think for me, its weaknesses at the moment are its version control and its kind of same session multi-user, which is apparently coming real soon in 2020. So if we can just go to, I think at the moment, like, there are a lot of things in all the design tools that are similar and different at the same time. I think a lot of the design tools right now have got a lot of functionality that's kind of very similar, or can all do the same kind of thing in a slightly different way. But if we kind of go to the next thing, so for Sketch, obviously its pixel precision is key, vector editing, it's all there. I do a lot of my kind of illustrations actually in Sketch, not in Illustrator anymore. It's got easy exports, it's got grids and layouts. All of these things you can see on the screen here are like what you would expect most kind of like really good UX or UI tools to have. One of the great things in Sketch right now is the developer handoff. Is something they've added quite recently, where you can send a developer a single link, and with that single link they can kind of inspect your kind of artboards, each individual component, get all the things they need for development, which is great. And also Sketch has a secondary kind of app which is called Mirror, and that basically allows you to kind of beam your kind of prototypes onto your phone and kind of user test them directly onto the device. So for me, kind of Sketch has 3 big things, and these are the things that I think that why Sketch is better than the rest. So for the first one is, it is the largest, for me, it has one of the largest libraries of plugins for almost any use. If you're someone who wants to keep your artboards really neat and really clean and really organized, there's kind of a plugin for it. If you want to kind of pull in Latin text really quickly, like, there's probably a plugin for it. My second reason is for Mac is an OS app. So it's actually on your computer, not in a browser app. And later in my talk, we'll get into that. I think some of the Figma users are not going to be too happy. And then my third one is that Sketch also, because it's a tried and trusted kind of platform and it's been around for a while, has a large selection of kind of third-party programs and extensions that aren't plugins. They're actually separate programs that kind of really seamlessly kind of work with Sketch to enable you to do some of the functionalities that you probably wouldn't be able to do in Sketch. So, yeah. So obviously, if we go on to kind of reason one, for me, reason one is the largest library of plugins, you know, for almost anything. And you can kind of see on this next slide that, Pietro, you could just go to the next slide. That'd be great. You can see me kind of scrolling down this page of all the kind of plugins that are available. As I said, there's kind of plugins for managing gradients, there's plugins for kind of managing padding and all the different things you can kind of imagine that you might want to speed up your workflow or take up, that might take up a lot of your time. People have probably made apps for it. So if these are three of the plugins for me that I use on like my day-to-day kind of workflow when I'm designing both UX and UI. So for me, Stark is great for kind of accessibility. So it's great for kind of checking to make sure that color contrast is there, to make sure that for color blindness that everything I'm producing is perfect and right. Pexels is great. If you don't know what Pexels is, a little bit, it's similar to kind of Unsplash. It allows you to kind of pull in images directly from a stock library. Vectory is great for kind of putting your work into a kind of three-dimensional kind of platform. And then Rename It is just a fantastic kind of plugin that allows you to rename layers, artboards as kind of groups and stuff. Is a great app. So if we could just go to the next bit. So you can see on this next slide, this is me actually kind of checking the contrast in kind of Stark. I'm going to select two layers. So normally what you'll check is a kind of text layer and a kind of background layer. And then you will, once the video catches up, what you'll then do is you'll actually get given a kind of contrast rating. So anything over 4.5 is kind of classed as kind of okay in contrast levels. Obviously this got like 5.7, I think. So I was perfect to kind of carry on with this design. You're getting a little sneak peek here into my kind of study buddy UX and design that I put together. So if we move on, so this is Pexels. So Pexels is great. It's just one of those quick things if you want to fill some of your kind of UX or your design with some quick images just to kind of see how things would look. You can use this app to basically just type in a kind of keyword. It'll fill it with a kind of random image that kind of matches your keyword, but it's something that allows you to continue your workflow without having to kind of leave Sketch. And I think that's kind of super useful. So if we can move on to the next bit. So this next one is Vectory. So I use this a lot for when presenting work to clients, just to give it a little bit more context, or when creating title screens or title slides for different things. You can then basically see in this kind of video, I'm basically selected this initial kind of onboarding screen. I've kind of gone into Vectory. I've selected Vectory. I've selected the kind of device that I want the kind of the work to appear on. So hopefully that'll catch up now. Yeah. And then once I've selected that, I can select the kind of angle I want the work to be seen at, and then I can kind of click OK, and then it'll actually produce a fully rendered kind of ready to go image that I can drop onto kind of any artboard, any piece of work, website, anything that I'm designing at the time. So that's super great. So my second reason, Rename It. So Rename It is great. So with Rename It, you can basically select multiple layers across different artboards, and it might be that you want to give all of those layers the same name. This kind of becomes helpful when you're using Principle, which we'll discuss later on. So making sure everything has the same name across every artboard. So you basically click all the layers you're looking for, open up Rename It. Rename It then allows you to rename multiple artboards at the same time, which is super useful. And I use this probably constantly throughout the day. So my kind of second reason for I think Sketch is the way to go is that it's a Mac app. So, and it's not a browser app. Now, for me, I can give you a kind of real world example of kind of how this came about and why I think this is a huge reason. Now, I had kind of decided I was going to try Figma out, and I was going to use it on a client project a little while back, probably about, I would say, 3 or 4 months ago. And I was on my way down to London, got all the designs ready the day before. I was ready to present to the client. I was on the train to London, ready to kind of present, and I opened up my laptop. I was like, right, I'll just check through everything that I've prepared, make sure I've got everything ready for the day. And I was like, loaded up Chrome, went to Figma, no internet. Oh, the train will have internet, right? Definitely, the train will have internet. So I went to see if it had Wi-Fi, no Wi-Fi. My phone, I can just tether it to my phone, right? That'll be fine. I can definitely do it that way. My phone had no signal. So there's me sitting there, you know, I can't load Figma, I can't get to my designs, I can't do anything without internet. So if we just move, I kind of just was getting more and more frustrated that I couldn't get there. And as this GIF shows, this was me throughout the next hour and a half on the train, getting super angry, super frustrated that I couldn't get to the work that I needed to get to at that time. But if for that piece of work that I'd been using Sketch, then I could have got to everything, because obviously Sketch being a Mac app is all local, it's all there, everything's saved there on my computer or, you know, on Dropbox or whatever. And I would have been able to edit everything. So for me, this is a huge thing. For someone like me who I travel quite a lot to London and to different clients, and making sure that I can always get to my designs, never have to worry about internet connection or anything to present, is super key for me. So I think this is, like, for me, a big factor in why I've stuck with Sketch rather than moving to Figma. So my third and final kind of reason is around a large selection of third-party programs and extensions. So as you'll see in the background here, hopefully everyone's seen Power Rangers before, but basically Power Rangers is incredible, and it's a great kind of analogy that Sketch is this one part of the robot, but then you can bolt on all these third-party bits of the robots to fight whatever problem or monster in the kind of Power Ranger world that you're having at that particular time. So I basically throughout my kind of time use 2 in my kind of day-to-day workflow, and that's kind of InVision and Principle. There are plenty others out there, including like Abstract, which is great for like design systems and larger teams and large projects. But InVision I use for kind of quick prototypes, proof of concept to a client, gaining feedback, that kind of stuff, and collating stuff. And then Principle I use for when I'm working with a developer on interaction design and on kind of higher fidelity prototypes. So obviously with InVision, you'll see here, this is my kind of study buddy app that I put together for a clickable prototype in kind of InVision. Now, InVision's great. It's still a little bit rough around the edges in terms of transitions and what it can do, but I think it's really good for just quick proof of concept, because you can just upload some screens directly from a plugin in Sketch, create a plugin from Sketch, and just, you know, create a really quick, seamless prototype. Now, I think one of the big things for me is kind of feedback. Now, obviously, I think the Figma crowds quite like that you can get comments and do stuff in Figma. Now, I'm one of those designers who's very much likes to keep my design work separate and my kind of comments separate. So when I'm in programs where I'm seeing feedback constantly being given, or I'm seeing a notification, I very much am wanting to go and see what's going on all the time. So I actually like keeping stuff separate. You can see here, I'm almost leaving a comment to myself. To do it is super simple. You can tag people in. It's really easy to do, and it's really seamless and just works great with Sketch. When I update files in the Sketch and push them back up to InVision, they instantly just update and it works. And for me, keeping these 2 things separate is great. But this is a perfect example of a third-party program working really seamlessly with Sketch. So the next third-party thing is around kind of Principle, and Principle is fantastic because you can see here in this video, I'm basically selected the particular screen that I'm after. I've made sure in Principle now that I've kind of selected the right thing. I've imported the selected screen and it's there. It has all my layers. It hasn't flattened everything. It's great. Everything's there. And I can now begin to start kind of animating in Principle. And again, very similar to kind of InVision, if you just update the screen, it will just update once you click through into Principal. So the next thing that you're about to see, so this is actually my Principal prototype that I created very quickly in Principal, just to show how I would want to see some of the kind of interaction design working. And as I said, I would be using this to kind of show developers that I'm working with, this is the kind of how I expect things to move. This is how I expect things to kind of interact. These are the kind of things that I'm doing. And this is something that, like, for example, you don't always get. You can't go into the finite kind of detail that you can go into in Principal that you can in some other prototyping kind of programs. So I think for me now, we'll just go into the kind of recap. So that's kind of like super high level. I could talk about this for hours, and feel free to come and talk to me afterwards in the sessions. But for me, the recap is, you know, it has the largest amount of library of plugins for all your kind of needs and to improve your workflow. It's always going to be there and never have an issue of not having internet. And also it's got a large selection of, like we've just seen, third-party kind of plugins that work. So I think for my part of the battle, I think that is me done, and my work here is done. And I'm going to pass over to Sebastian, who I think is going to talk to you about Adobe XD. Thanks for having me.
Guys, sorry, that was weird. Hi, my name is Sebastian. I work for VIEWPORT, and I'm gonna talk about Adobe XD. Yeah, we have this 1 minute presentation. So for me, XD is the strength are that it's very easy to use. It's super fast. And then, I mean, development-wise, but also in the tool to create a prototype or to create designs. So it's high performance. You can do team collaboration. You also have some cool features like voice commands in prototyping. One of my favorite features is the repeat grid in combination with the viewport. You can do a lot of things with that. The layout and smart responsive design is great for mobile design, which I did in this for the prototype of Study Buddy. Component states are actually something really, really cool. Like I've never seen this in any other tool. And then stacks is a bit like auto layout in Figma. Component library, component states might be sometimes a bit of a challenge, but once you learn how to work with it, it's quite easy. Voice commands is the same thing. You just need to know what to do. Some things I'm missing is tabs and multiple windows in one window and different instance versions. I think that's quite cool of Figma. So yeah, Adobe XD is becoming the new Photoshop for me. Well, not Photoshop, but you know what I mean. It's Adobe. Everything they do is quite cool. Peter? Yes. So, hey, Sebastian, why Adobe XD? You can go to the next slide, Peter. Yeah, first of all, why not? When I started using Adobe, it was in the end of 2016. And I worked for a company where the functional analysts and UI designers and UX designers all worked on both Mac and Windows. And Sketch didn't have a Windows, or doesn't have a Windows version. And Figma was not very well known at the time. And we also already had Adobe Creative Suite, so it was kind of easy for us because you get it for free then, basically. We had Photoshop, we had Illustrator, we used Premiere, Lightroom, After Effects in the whole company. So for us it was quite of a no-brainer. And also the central and public library that we were trying to build they were having this already. So for us, that was an important feature. It has a big community, and you could do a lot of feature requests, which I did because in the beginning there was not much in Adobe. So okay, so this is the Study Buddy app. No, backpack. This is the Study Buddy app. one back, please. Yeah. So I'll quickly go over the prototype. If you just press space, please. Space. Yes. Oh. Something is wrong with the video, I think. Okay. Yeah. Can you start from the beginning, Peter? Is that possible? Yes. Okay, so we click on the Study Buddy app. Yes, nice. So first of all, you create an account. You type in your name and last name and whatever. You register. You get an email from Study Buddy. You open it. Then you can add subjects. So I sign up for chemistry, French. I scroll down. I can see mathematics in there as well. I confirm. So what you can see now is I used component states, so you can see that on hover. But also when I add more subjects, you can see that the prototype automatically enables the component states. So I didn't have to do anything for this in my prototype, so that's quite cool. And then you have, I click on chemistry, I see the teacher. Here you have chemistry on the top, and with stacks I can rearrange that, which I will show later in my designs. So next slide. These are the things that make me happy about the about Adobe XD are the following. Yeah, so first of all, I would like to compare it to Roadrunner from Looney Tunes because of the speed. Kudos to the Adobe team. They're doing a great job in recent years, like the development time. I've been using Figma for the last 3 months, and I came back to Adobe XD, and there were so many new features. It's been like this for every time. So it's quite insane, and it's also good for if you want to do quick designs, quick prototypes. A lot of the things they do automatically, which I will show. First feature I would like to point out that I used during my app design for Study Buddy was the layout. It's very easy to use. Oh, back please. Yes. It's applicable per page or per artboard. It's not only the gutters and the width that you can decide, but also from the top and bottom. And then the coolest feature here is that you can make it a new default. So you go to another artboard, then you can set it as a new default, and or make it the default. So that's quite cool. Then auto responsive is a really cool feature. I know Figma that you can put constraints on components for mobile friendly screens. But here I chose to do it automatically. So I chose here responsive resize auto, and yeah, it does everything itself. I didn't have to do it. If it doesn't do it, you can still do it manually. But I like to compare this as my work is a traffic jam of work. What car do I want to drive? That's an automatic car. I don't want to drive a manual car when there's heaps of traffic jams. And if my work is piling up, then I would rather use this and not be working around in constraints and stuff like that. So that's what I like about this feature. The repeat grid is a super powerful feature in Adobe XD. So you can see you can move data around. You can change spacing in between the components. You can choose fixed width and auto resize for the components. So I used auto resize here. It was probably better if I used fixed width, but it doesn't matter. If you have a file full of data like images or a text document, you can just drag and drop them into the repeat grid, and it will just autofill. And it also repeats component stage. This is a really cool feature that I will show you later. It's super powerful. So as you can see on the GIF or on the video, it's super easy to create a grid or a form or whatever. It's really, really handy. But I'll show that later. So these are the component states. If you do it right, so if you do it in a master file or in your library, it will make interactions and prototypes way more easy. Because once you use, like, for example, a repeat grid, the component state will be added to everything in that repeat grid, and I will show you that later. Basically, what a component state does, you have a default state, and you can add selected state or hover state that is here. And what it does, it records what you do in between those states. So you can really go crazy, like with the exploded heart in the video. But I'll show more of this later. So the animations are quite cool. In the video here, I use auto animate. I use that for everything, basically. Adobe is quite smart for some reason. It just looks nice when it opens up like this. You have a few cool triggers that you can use. You can do a tap, which is very common, to click a button or something, but you can do also a drag. You can drag, like, for example, for a, let's say, Google Calendar type of thing. You can use a time trigger, which I used in the beginning of the app. When you click on the icon, it opened that orange screen, basically like a waiting thing. So that was that's nice. You can do keys and gamepad triggers or voice triggers. So you can say, "Hey Siri, open Buddy app," and it will do it. So that's cool. Then you have overlays, auto animate for types. You can do speech playback and audio playback. So that's real cool. I didn't make a voice command in here, but I can show it later if you want in the sessions. Okay, so here we have the viewport. It's a very powerful tool if you use it in combination with the grid, in the repeat grid. So you can see that the blue thing is the viewport, and I use it in combination with the repeat grid. And I want to show you guys here that we do a vertical and horizontal scroll. You can choose just vertical or just horizontal. That's up to you, but I think it was quite cool to show both. And in the component, there is a selection button, and I put in a component state in there. So you'll see now in the prototype that you can just click it, select it, and deselect it. And I didn't have to do anything for this, just repeat the grid. Next. So that's quite amazing for me. And then stacks, it's pretty much like auto layout in Figma, but just easier, really. I don't want to offend anyone, but you just make a group, and then here on the side, you can see stacks. You click on stacks. Adobe will recognize if it's automatically, if it's a vertical or a horizontal stack, and then you can just change the components inside. So for example, the square, I just move it around, or chemistry I could put down and mathematics up. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, next. Okay, so why did you ask Adobe XD? Well, it's pretty awesome. It's pretty easy for people who were not power users, but if you become a power user, it's even better. So I think it's for both profiles. All right, that's my presentation for Adobe XD, and I will now give the word to my talented Figma colleague. She's really good with Figma. You'll probably learn a lot. Next.
Thank you for the introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm Juliette. I'm a UX and UI designer. I've been doing that for 5 years now. I started my career working for a small startup company doing UI design and also a little bit of front-end development. But I wanted to focus more on design, so I decided to join POW. And I've been working on various different projects lately, and they mostly focused on design systems and working in larger design teams. And I found that with those projects, Figma was the best tool to use, because I find the library asset management really intuitive, and also, of course, because you can work together. So that brings me to this slide, the strengths of Figma. Of course, team collaboration. It's also platform independent. You can use it on Windows, Mac, Linux even. And it's an all-in-one tool. You don't need any other tools. You can do handoffs, you can do prototypes, everything in one tool. And the performance is actually really good as well. It's cloud-based, but I've never experienced any lag. My favorite features of Figma is the intuitiveness of the assets management. I'm hoping to convince you guys of that later in my presentation. The smart animate prototyping feature is pretty cool. And of course, the collaborations, instant syncing is just awesome. Then challenges, auto layout could indeed be better. Payment plan is sometimes a bit confusing. And the biggest missing thing is, of course, that you cannot work offline, which could be a slight inconvenience if you don't have Wi-Fi. Next slide, please. Here's my prototype that I made for the assignment. Put a little splash animation in there. Some animation on the text field as well. And everything in this prototype is made in Figma. I'm just gonna go through the registration real quick. Opening emails. And in the app itself, I put a little horizontal slider in there as well, and some more smart animate. And then in the following slides, I will explain to you how I've created this prototype. I'll show you how you can create styles and components, if you need any other tools and how you can use those. And I'll show a bit of the team collaboration feature and the prototype settings. So next slide, please. So here I'm going to create styles for colors. What I really like is that you can really keep your library nice, clean. Of course, you're probably familiar with the forward slashes. So just gonna type in gray slash something, purple slash something. And it groups your styles really neatly. If the video is working smoothly, yeah. And you can also reorder your styles here. And then here I'll show you quickly how you can create text styles. I'm actually using a plugin here. If you don't want to have to do all the styles one by one, just use plugins. I'm creating text styles generator. Select it all at once. I've already given the layers the right name. So that way you see it creates 8 styles at once, and the styles are nicely grouped as well. And then on the next screen, I pre-recorded the sound because I wanted to keep it nice and short. So yeah, let's just play the next slide, please. And now I will show you how you can create components. I've already created the header, text field, buttons, and list items, but I'm going to create icons as well. I've imported these from Material Design, but I really recommend that you use your own icon set, that you have it in your own library, because it has a lot of advantages if you want to use them in your other components. So when I select these, you can see the color is not right yet. I don't have to select them each individually. The Figma has a nice feature here that you can do selection colors. So every item with this hex color, I can just change it to my own color style. I'm gonna do that here. I had already named my icons, and now I just got to do create multiple components. And you can see here, if I make an instance of this button and say I would want to change the icon that I use in this button, just got to go to Assets, open the icons, and just click and drag it right here into my component. Just got to change the color. And you can see it keeps all the layout settings that I had in my button component. So it has the right padding from the right. And then what you may have noticed as well is that I'm not using any forward slashes here, any at all. I did do that with the styles and for color and text, but it's actually nicer to use frames to group your components when you're using when you're creating multiple components, because you can then add information and documentation to your frames. I'll show that quickly in another design system, like you see here. The button frame, these are the elements that you'll see in your design system, but there's also a bit more documentation in here. So let me quickly show you how you can use your components in your design. I have a different page for my designs and just got to add a frame here in the size of a phone. Then I'm going to go to my assets panel, drag in the header, drag in the text field, drag in the button, and here's also why it comes in handy that you've grouped your components. That if I want to change this button from a default state to let's say the disabled state, just got to go to the instance and select disabled. So there you go, that's quite easy as well. How did I create this button? It's with auto layout. So say if I would want to type in another text here, say continue, it grows. Of course I want to grow it, otherwise I want to grow it to the left, so I just got to put the constraint here on the right. Then when I do that again, continue, you see that it grows nice to the left. And I made that with a horizontal auto layout here on the content, the text and the icon, but then the actual button itself has the vertical layout. You can see here, and I set the padding there in the vertical layout. This is a nice little trick to be able to also use your button in a full width state. So you see I can drag it to full width here as well. Then one more thing I would want to show you is how I created the splash screen. So I'm just going to delete this. I've used a plugin to create the splash screen with the animation. So you can see I have a lot of plugins. For that one, I use Lottie Files. Lottie Files lets you import creations from After Effects as a GIF into your design. So you can create your own After Effects animation and upload them, or you can search through like a large file base of animations created by other users. You can just drag it in or click on it, and then it's imported as a GIF. And when you play your prototype, it will animate in your prototype. So just a quick recap for what's good about it. You can quickly create styles and components with or without plugins. You can keep your assets library simple and clear. You can easily swap instances, and you can create a design system with documentation. So don't create this like the example on the left. Don't use so many forward slashes that you have loads of drop downs. You can keep it nice and clean like the example on the right. So for other tools, what do we need? We don't actually need any other tools. You can create everything in Figma, but if you still want to use other tools, that's possible as well. If you want to keep your handoffs in Zeppelin, that's possible. However, Figma has a really good handoff itself. You can see here in the screenshot, it's if you share your design to a developer, you can see the specs, and you can actually show your style names in there as well. So if you're working with a development team on a design system that wants to use tokens, you can make sure that your style names are the same as the tokens. Like you can see here on the right, the color background above it, it says pink/7. That could be your token name. Versioning is also something that exists in Figma. Of course, it's automatically. Figma saves your version, so you can always go back to a previous version. But you can also save manually, and then you can give it a name, give it a description. So that's quite convenient as well. Prototyping is also included in Figma with Smart Animate. I'll go back to that later. And there's a really large community. If you subscribe to the beta, you get access to like loads of resources for UI kits, tutorials, also lots of plugins. And the Slack channel is actually quite active. So if you're beginning with Figma, you have questions, make sure to join them, because if you ask questions, they always reply almost instantly. So for team collaboration, what can we do? We can work together in the same file at the same time with multiple designers. When you sync your assets, when you publish them, your colleagues will get them instantly. You can share your files with developers and stakeholders to get feedback and comments, and it's platform independent. So here's a little screenshot of what that could look like. This might not be the ideal situation for you, that you have your stakeholders and everyone snooping around in your designs. Maybe you were still exploring on the colors, you wasn't too sure about those. But you can avoid this. What I would do is I would create a file where I'm exploring with my designs. And then when they're done, I'm creating a different file, and I only give access to that file to the stakeholder. So would look a little bit like this. You got your onboarding exploration file, and then when the designs are done, put them in handoff, and I'm just sharing the handoff file. And then in the handoff file, your stakeholders, developers can leave comments, give you feedback, so you have a nice like one source for all your feedback. So for prototyping, what can we do? I think you can do pretty much everything that you need for like a simple mock-up prototype. You can connect your screens, choose between different interaction and animation options. You can set easing, and you can view your prototype either in the browser, in the app, or on your mobile phone, also with a mirror app. So I just had another demonstration of how you can create a prototype with buttons. Say you would want to have those orange buttons come out of the middle button, like pop out of it. Make sure that you name the layers exactly the same in both of the screens, because that's what the smart animation works on. So I'm just putting those buttons under my plus and close icon button. And just make like a connection from there, like a tap interaction, set your easing. And I'm gonna put it really slow so that the video shows it smoothly, hopefully. And then for the next screen, I put a rotation on there on the close button. You can see it there. So if I set the first button to 0, you will get a nice animation from a plus icon into a close icon. So and then put the same animation to go back to the previous screen. Then set your starting point, and then we can play the prototype. So when I click on it, you'll see the buttons appearing and going back in. And then for my next slide, I want to challenge Adobe's repeat grid. You don't have it in Figma, but I think you can sort of create it by using vertical layout. So the entire screen has vertical layout here. And then when I change the padding here on the right, you'll see that my screen automatically grows because I've set vertical layout on the list and the screen as well. And then also if I would copy and paste list items, the screen will grow as well. So this is quite handy if you need to make like a very large front app screen and you want it to grow automatically. You can also just reorder your list items. You can do that here on the left. As you see, HTML, you have a script word reordered. But if you're not using vertical auto layout, you can also do it by just simply clicking and dragging and dropping it in there. So those were my demonstrations. And that's all. If you have any questions or if you want to challenge me, come find me afterward and we can talk about it. So next up is Kevin for Exure.
There we go, Juliette. Thanks a lot for your nice presentation about Figma. Hello, everybody. I'm Kevin, and my journey started around about 7 years ago. At my first job in Germany as a UX designer in a bank, and the head of design just told me like, hey, we are using the tool Exure. In case you don't know it, feel free to watch the tutorials, play a little bit around. Get into detail, and from then on, I was completely catched by Exure, and yeah, for me there was no need ever to change the tool. Just focus on some basic facts on Exure, and I think the biggest strengths of Exure is definitely prototyping. Typical features, what I use almost in every prototype, is the possibility to add some conditional logic, and also to work with some kind of widget. It's called repeater, where you actually can play around with real data set. Challenges, what I had at the beginning with Exure is to get used to the complexity a bit and how things work properly. And other than that, when I was working with other colleagues together and gave them some introductions in Exure, it took them a bit to get some good workflow in that. But once you challenged it, that you get some nice routine in Exure, I'm pretty sure you won't need any other tool. And now I just want to give you a short overview about some nice features what Exure actually can do. So next slide. So yeah, Exure, the old and rusty one. In comparison to the other tools, Exure is the first version of Exure was released 2002, so actually 18 years old. And the general perception, what I hear always when I talk to some other designers, is that a lot of people don't know the capabilities of Exure, and they always have the mindset like, okay, Exure is some kind of an old application, outdated and not really supporting the features what you need nowadays. But I can assure you, I think Exure is at the end one of the most underestimated prototyping, designing, wireframing, documentation tools ever on the market. So yeah, the next thing what I want to show to you is my prototype what I created. Just will comment it. So the first thing what you can see is the startup animation. Then you have some possibilities to create an account. The text fields, what you can see here, by the way, are real text fields. So you can enter real data and play a little bit around. Also, as you can see, the button is disabled. And as soon as I enter all required fields, the button gets enabled and users can continue. So that's the best way to create some real experience. Now we need to confirm the email address. So let's open the email application. There it is, Study Buddy. Confirm the email, and we are getting back to the login screen. So the user what we created so far, we take it and log into the application. As you can see, there are already some subjects. We can add some subjects. So there's already a list based on the selection what you make. Here, for example, botany, you can select it and it will be submitted to the next screen as well. So you can really interact with the prototype and yeah, can play around with real data at the end. Let's see how the profile of the professor looks like. So I'm just using the email address of the profile. And now I log into the other account. And as you can see, based on the text field and the input what you give, you directly can yeah, create some kind of behavior that the app already exists. So pretty nice if you do some user tests and if you gave them the requirements like here are the sign-up credentials, just use that account, then the people won't sometimes realize that it's even a prototype. And it's, in my opinion, one of the best ways to get feedback on your work and see how people are really behaving with the application, with the prototype what you created so far. That's, by the way, just a wireframe part regarding fidelity. Axure provides basically all kind of highest fidelity features what you need. So the designs what you have seen so far in Sketch, Figma, or Adobe XD are also perfectly doable with Axure. So nothing where Axure needs to hide itself. Then one of the next things what I want to show you, just some general things how I actually start my project. So Axure also offers a lot of possibilities to create a proper project setups where you can manage all your styles what you have so far. And whoa, that was fast. Where you can manage all the styles and create some masters. That's basically just some kind of library what you can use at the end to make some changes and adapt them to the entire project. That's super interesting when it comes to more complex projects where you need to make some general adjustments and apply it to the entire prototype. I will skip the next slide and go directly to another feature. To the default widgets what Axure is offering. So at the end, I like the possibility to be really flexible with the elements what is Axure offering. And here, as you can see, we have a couple of times the box element, we have title elements, we have text elements, we have radio buttons, checkbox, whatever. But at the end, it's not that you need to make a decision at the very first beginning. The fact that you can restyle all elements or a lot of elements to other elements. And that's also one of the things what I really like on Axure. We have these kind of flexibility. Other than that, there's one super important feature. It's the dynamic panel. I used it also in one of my prototypes, but I'm not showing that in detail. And here, for example, I used the rectangle, and I would like to mimic the same behavior like the radio buttons. And just to show you how fast it is actually, what we need to do is we just create the buttons. Then first of all, we need to apply some style effects, for example, hover effects or a selected state. You can also add a disabled state and just try to mimic the exact behavior how buttons should be. The next thing what we are going to do is we group these buttons to some kind of a radio button group. So we tell them like, hey, guys, you are now together and only one of you can be active on the same time. And the last thing what we need to do is we just apply a small interaction where we tell the button like, okay, if you get clicked, you just need to set your state to enabled. And we tell it to the same button as well. And then as you can see in the live mode, let's reload the prototype. So actually you're just created in 40 seconds these kind of behavior with buttons. So one of the other features what I really would like to show and I'm enthusiastic about is the conditional logic. So based on the user input that the prototype gives also right feedback. You have seen it in the login screen. So if you go to the next slide, Peter, I'm going to show you how you can set it up. So what I have done there is I set the button to disabled first of all. Then I'm selecting the first text field and tell the text field always when the text gets changed, please let the button know that you're something doing. So with this kind of behavior, I just copy and paste it and put it to the other text field. And the next thing what I'm going to do is to tell the button like, hey, always when you get triggered by one of those text fields, check the conditions of the text fields. And based on the conditions, you need to enable or disable yourself. And then, as you can see here, you can select the conditions like text on widget. You want to select the text of the email field and the text of the password field. If one of them is empty, then you tell the button basically like, okay, disable yourself. And other than that, if both are able, if both are filled, you tell the button just like get enabled. And it's basically the same with the login functionality. As you have seen before, if you enter the email address of the professor, you can directly log into the application. And I did the same kind of validation, like if in a text is, for example, the email address entered of the professor, then we redirect the user to the profile page of the professor, or other than that, just to the student. So the capabilities, what you can do is basically not limited. So everything what requires some kind of conditional logic can be sure it can be covered via Azure. At least I didn't found any restrictions so far. Also not for a drag and drop application or stuff like that. So it's amazing what kind of crazy stuff you can do with these kind of feature. Then one other feature what I use quite often is the repeater. To make it short, due to the fact that I want to skip the next slide, the repeater is basically a small database what you can add to your prototype. So as you have seen before, the other applications were just playing around with dummy data. But what we can actually do is we can just ask some developer or product guys like, hey, can you share us some live data of the application? And then you just create a table directly in Azure, and based on the data, you can interact. That means you can add some filters, you can add a sorting, you can remove some items, you can add items. There are basically no limitations. And quite often I got the feedback from real users like, okay, and can I log in now with my account to that application, or how is that working now? So it's pretty amazing to see people, how they interact when they have the real data set behind. So therefore, I definitely can recommend to use the repeater in order to create some kind of really realistic behavior and feeling for users. So that was it about conditional logic, repeater. Then let's go to the next slide. Not that one, we can skip that. Azure Cloud. Was pretty amazing to see the progress of Azure Cloud. So every application has some kind of possibilities to share their prototypes, documents, whatever. Azure Cloud as well, and they just separated the product now a little bit. It's now a dedicated service where you can use. It's called Azure Cloud. They were also like that, like, okay, come, let's give the other applications some possibilities to use our amazing platform, but it's perfectly integrated with Azure. And if you go to the next slide, just a couple of examples what you can do there. So basically you just share your prototype or update it with one click. If some user or company requires it that you need to host a prototype somewhere else, then you also can add a local server to it. So basically that fits to every kind of compliance stuff what you have in other companies. Anyhow, if you have hosted a prototype in Azure Share, there's also a nice functionality that you can easily add some comments on some design. So it's pretty nice if you share some prototypes and get directly some feedback. I think it's some kind of standard functionality. So you get an email push notification if someone added it, and then you can directly adjust the feedback in your prototype. One other pretty cool thing is the inspect mode, and that is also quite new, but developers have, same like in Figma, the possibility to open a prototype and to go into the inspect mode to grab all the specifications what they need at the end in order to develop it properly. Other than that, if they switch back to the preview mode, they can play around with the application. The inspect mode is freezing it basically. So also dependent on the state what you're using of your prototype, they can really grab out all the details what they need. Then one of my last features, the last feature what I actually want to show to you, is the usage of plugins. And we have learned that Sketch, for example, has a huge base of plugins. Pretty interesting to see. But in my opinion, Azure has a different approach to handle plugins. And what they actually do is they allow you to inject JavaScript snippets to your prototype. What does that mean in detail? I have 3 examples. Example number 1 is you can just implement a Hotjar analytics tool into your prototype. Or you can use Google Analytics for any reason. We did it once and we realized, okay, the user is accessing now the prototype. It was for a sales pitch. And afterwards, we directly called him like, hey, you have seen a product. And we got the pitch, by the way. So pretty cool to implement Google Analytics. And if you want to earn some extra money for any reason, just implement Google Ads and annoy your colleagues with advertising in your prototype. So there are basically no limitations. If you go to the next slide, I would like to show you a game changer when it comes to user testing. It's the way how you implement the plugin. So the most complex part here is to set up the project in Hotjar. That took me around about 10 minutes. But once you have the code snippet here, you can implement it in 20 seconds in your prototype, but just going to the Azure cloud, add new plugin, copy and paste the code snippet here. At the end, if you edit it, you can decide on which pages you want to have these plugin available, also for all the upcoming pages. Once that is done and the tracking is set up, you can do some really nice thing, but you can directly watch some screen recordings of your user using your prototype. And in my opinion, that's comparison to all the other tools, a nice game changer to get some extra insights and feedback from your users playing around with your prototype. All right, on the next slide, the only thing what I want to tell to you is a quote from Walt Disney. The way to get started is quit talking and begin doing. So everyone has an opinion about Azure, but although it's old and rusty, in my opinion, it's the most powerful tool on the market, what you can ever use for creating prototypes, documentation, wireframing, design, and other weird stuff. So thanks for that. And I hand over to Peter now.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, especially Dan from Kit and Kim for helping us out with the sketch one. After all these amazing presentations, I want to ask you one more thing. We are still on this poll, but let's say after this presentation, you've seen some cool things. Would you consider switching tools after it? You can either, again, scan the QR code, or you can just go to the same page as you were. So someone will, yes, there's people who want to switch tools. It's one vote for each at the moment. Some really want to switch. I think the specific cases answer will win this, because we've seen what all the tools their strengths are. Especially, I think some people were amazed by what Azure can do, and it's really cool. But in specific cases, people can really switch tools, and they can say, okay, let me use this tool when I want to prototype, and this when I want to design, or this when I want to collaborate with people. So it's normal. All right, I think we're gonna wrap it up. We're gonna quickly have a look at the Q&A. I'm not sure where that is. We'll look at it later. I'm gonna go back and handing over to Annie.
Thanks so much, Peter, and all of our power users and experts. That was really impressive. I feel like I learned a lot. I learned about so many new features that I've never tried before or didn't even know existed. And Kevin, we all saw what you did there. We thought you were the old man coming in on the race, and I think you really impressed people with what Axure can still do as a tool. But really, all four have these amazing strengths and weaknesses. I hope that it was inspiring to everyone and that you try a new tool and see what it can do for you. And like I said in the chat, I mean, 10 years ago, I remember trying to design some of the very first responsive sites that I'd ever worked on when it was brand new in these clunky old tools like OmniGraffle and Visio. And it's unbelievable how far we've come in what we can do as designers to get creative and try new things and test things. So this was a really fun event. Thank you, Pau, for putting this on.